Section 1 of the Parallel Lives of the Noble Greeks and Romans, Volume 7. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Parallel Lives of the Noble Greeks and Romans, Volume 7, by Lucius Mestrius Plutarchus, translated by Bernadotte Perrin. Demosthenes, chapters 1 through 10. The author of the encomium upon Alcibiades for his victory in the chariot race at Olympia, whether he was Euripides, as the prevailing report has it, or some other, says, Socius, that the first requisite to a man's happiness is birth in a famous city. But in my opinion, for a man who would enjoy true happiness, which depends for the most part on character and disposition, is at no disadvantage to belong to an obscure and mean city, any more than it is to be born of a mother who is of little stature and without beauty. For it were laughable to suppose that Iulius, which is a little part of a small island of Ceos, and Aegina, which a certain Athenian was urgent to have removed as an eyesore of the Piraeus, should breed good actors and poets, but should never be able to produce a man who is just, independent, wise, and magnanimous. The arts, indeed, since their object is to bring business or fame, naturally pine away in obscure and mean cities, but virtue, like a strong and hardy plant, takes root in any place, if she finds there a generous nature, and a spirit that shuns no labor. Wherefore we also, if we fail to live and think as we ought, will justly attribute this not to the smallness of our native city, but to ourselves. However, when one has undertaken to compose a history based upon readings which are not readily accessible or even found at home, but in foreign cities for the most part, and scattered about among different owners, for him it is really necessary, first and above all things, that he should live in a city which is famous, friendly to the liberal arts and populace, in order that he may have all sorts of books in plenty, and may by hearsay and enquiry come into possession of all those details which elude writers and are preserved with more conspicuous fidelity in the memories of men. He will thus be prevented from publishing a work which is deficient in many, and even in essential things. But as for me, I live in a small city, and I prefer to dwell there that it may not become smaller still. And during the time when I was in Rome and various parts of Italy, I had no leisure to practice myself in the Roman language, owing to my public duties and the number of my pupils in philosophy. It was therefore late, when I was well on in years, that I began to study Roman literature. And here my experience was an astonishing thing, but true. For it was not so much that by means of words I came to a complete understanding of things, as that from things I somehow had an experience which enabled me to follow the meaning of words, but to appreciate the beauty and quickness of the Roman style, the figures of speech, the rhythm, and the other embellishments of language. While I think it a graceful accomplishment, and one not without its pleasures, still the careful practice necessary for attaining this is not easy for one like me, but appropriate for those who have more leisure, and those whose remaining years still suffice for such pursuits. Therefore, in this 5th book of my Parallel Lives, where I write about Demosthenes and Cicero, I shall examine their actions and their political careers, to see how their natures and dispositions compare with one another, but I shall make no critical comparison of their speeches, nor try to show which was the more agreeable or the more powerful orator. For useless, as Ion says, is a dolphin's might upon dry ground, a maxim which Cecilius, who goes to excess in everything, forgot when he boldly ventured to put forth a comparison of Demosthenes and Cicero. But really it is possible that, if the know thyself of the oracle were an easy thing for every man, it would not be held to be a divine injunction. In the case of Demosthenes and Cicero, then, it would seem that the deity originally fashioned them on the same plan, implanting in their natures many similarities,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?